We at 360 are here to celebrate a special person. You all know him as Malcom X. Some call him El Haj Malik Shabazz. May 19th is why we're here celebrating, because we want to carry on the life and legacy of a very special man that we all hold dear to our hearts. We're going to be going over one of his last speeches before his untimely death. We all have excerpts that we're going to be sharing with you, and we're going to share what we think of the excerpt and why it's special to us. So, let's get started.
I'll get to the point. There's just one thing I want to say. I'll get to the point. There's just one thing I want to say.
What made this speech so important that we think that we should discuss this?
This speech, being one of his last major speeches before a major audience, I think is really important in that he was struggling mightily at this point in his life, in that his house had just been firebombed. He was pretty much broke, and he knew that his days were numbered. So for him to go out the way he did and do this speech on that night took tremendous courage, took tremendous fortitude, and it's something that I think anybody can be proud of, the fact that he went out that night knowing that his days were numbered, and he did it anyway.
I was in a house last night that was bombed, my own. It isn't something that made me lose confidence in what I'm doing, because my wife understands, and I have children from this size on down, and even in their young age, they understand. I think they would rather have a father or brother, or whatever the situation may be, who will take a stand in the face of any kind of reaction from narrow-minded people, rather than to compromise and later on have to grow up in shame and in disgrace.
You know what the nation are saying that they're going to do. You know the FBI and the CIA are not coming to help. Days before the house was bombed, and still there's no assistance. And like you're saying, you're still coming, you're still getting on the plane to give this speech because the movement means something. I totally agree.
Yeah, it was bigger than him, and he knew that.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that it was something that he had to do, as a mantle that he had to carry. So he picked it up and he carried it. And that, to me, is what makes him one of my all-time heroes. He knew he would be dead within a matter of hours. Just relative.
Yeah.
But he knew he was on his way out. But he continued. He did not compromise. He did not shrink. He went out and did what he had to do.
You hear that voice, you hear that fear in his voice. You hear that anxiety within the last couple of weeks, months, and you hear it in his voice. The anxiety of how he's speaking, the mannerisms, the cadences of his speech is changing some between earlier when he was with the nation, when he started his his organization. He changed some. It's something that you want to guess is that because of the threats.
The first one that I found to be important, that I related to personally as a white man, was when he talked about the experience he had in Mecca befriending other white people.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about the relationships he formed with white men, maybe white women as well, when he was there, in which he didn't feel that the race, that the whiteness of the person in front of him was a social identity. That a white person, or the white people he met in Mecca, simply described themselves as white as sort of matter of fact, as simply a distinguishing characteristic of one's physical appearance.
In Asia or the Arab world or in Africa, where the Muslims are, if you find one who says he's white, all he's doing is using an adjective to describe something that's incidental about him, one of his incidental characteristics.
He differentiates that strongly with the experiences that he has with white people in America, where white people here spoke of themselves as white as not only a physical trait, but as a construction of power as well.
But when you get the white man over here in America and he says he's white, he means something else. You can listen to the sound of his voice when he says he's white. He means he's boss. That's right. That's what white means in this language.
And the reason why I think that is important is because I think that's something that today my people and I still are plagued with. Whiteness in this country still carries with it a great deal of privilege, and it's something that I think we need to get better in touch with. We need to tap into the entitlement that we often feel that we have, that we often behave with. The assumptions that we make about ourselves or other people, I think, are rooted in this idea that whiteness is a standard. It is a standard of perfection. It is a standard of aspiration, and that it is just the way things ought to be, and anything outside of whiteness is considered different. Whereas in Mecca, he experienced white people as very different. And so it makes me also wonder about the spiritual aspect of whiteness in this country. And is it possible to be white or call oneself white and truly be a Christian, to truly be a Muslim, and at the same time embracing the idea of whiteness, not accepting one's white skin and one's heritage as a European American, so to speak, but embracing whiteness? Can one embrace whiteness and also be a Christian or a good Muslim or a good Baha'i or a Buddhist? I think the answer is no.
I think in a sense, with the way white supremacy and Christianity have functioned, I think the two, for some people, are one and the same. Are one and the same, you know, because Christianity is so associated with whiteness and has everything to do with white being pure and white being righteous and white being nice and clean and acceptable. And that's what the Christianity and Jesus and the white robes and God and the white flowing robes with the white flowing beard and the white flowing hair, and you know, I think they're one and the same. But you're right, because at the same time, because you can't say in the American sense of the word I'm white, in the American sense, like Malcom X was talking about, and still be a true Christian, whatever that is.
And you raise a great point about which Jesus are we talking about here? Are we talking about Republican Jesus with blonde hair and blue eyes, or are we talking about traditional Jesus with brown skin, hair like wool, who flipped over tables and upset the establishment and gave to the poor, cared for the weak, and advocated for the uplift of oppressed people, right? And so when I speak about Christianity, I'm thinking about it in its truest form, which is meant to uplift the human spirit, care for all, convey and live through a deep sense of compassion. And so I think it's impossible to be a true Christian or a true Muslim in that sense. Not blonde-haired Jesus, right? Who walks around with a machine gun, right, and talks about, you know, military defense and all the other things that the conservative rhetoric in this country promotes. But I think that's the point, right? Is that whiteness has turned Jesus, of all people, upside down in a way that's made it impossible for my people to, I think, truly become spiritual beings, or to one of the things you always say, Mari, is to become truly human.
The Malcolm who we always seem to see is not who they advertise. Who they really want Malcolm to be, they want to demonize him and dehumanize him as being this hateful person. And whenever you see Malcolm X, that's the image they want everybody to see, is this person of hate, this person of separating people, the person of segregating. You know, you never see him in the light what you see in his speech as a person of togetherness. We don't think of Malcolm like that most of the time. We do, but I'm saying the image that Malcolm's portrayed nowadays is the exact opposite of what we see in his speech.
I think that's one of that leads me to one of the things that I was thinking about as far as the speech being important, is the community, that sense of community, that sense of brown and black community, brown and black people moving in the same direction as one. Well, one of the ways that they stop that from happening is with the press and the media, and he talked specifically about statistics and how they use statistics to drive wedges into communities,
At the local level, they'll create an image by feeding statistics to the press, through the press, showing the high crime rate in the Negro community. And as soon as this high crime rate is emphasized through the press, then people begin to look upon the Negro community as a community of criminals.
And then you have black folks who buy into that. You have white folks who buy into that. You have Hispanics who buy into it, and Arabs who buy into it. And then you're in a situation where you can treat these people any way you want. Mm-hmm. You do anything to them because it's a community of criminals, based on the statistics that they created at the FBI, who we love so much, who has that great track record in the black community. That's where they still get these same statistics from the same FBI, from the same J. Edgar Hoover building in D.C. And they still push this stuff into the press. And they use those statistics and all these formulas and all these complicated algorithms which they created to criminalize us so that we can't unite. Because if the three of us, the four of us are all here and we're all angry, but we're the only four who know, then the four outside the room who are also angry, looking in here, listening, are criminals, not knowing that they are being portrayed as the exact same criminal, and that's the reason why we can't unite. We see them out there and we think other. They see us in here, they think other. You know, and they use these things, skillfully manipulate public perception of us to keep us divided.
That still goes on today, right?
Oh,
turn the news on anytime at 5 and 6 o'clock. What do you see? Plastering is all across the TV. After a while, if you see this every single night of the image of a black person being put in handcuffs or being killed, or the criminal in a jail suit, a jumpsuit, you then begin to see every black person as that person as a criminal, because they still use the imagery every single night. So it's embedded into a person's mind that when they see somebody that looks like me and you, there's a criminal. And I know, and to validate it, I have it validated every single night when I turn the TV on that, well, I told you they're all criminals, look at it. I think the most profound thing that Malcolm said in his speech, and again, to go back to him being exonerated of who he used to be, he now uses a method because he measures a person by a yardstick.
The yardstick that is used by the Muslim to measure another man is not the man's color, but the man's deeds, the man's conscious behavior, the man's intentions. And when you use that as a standard of measurement or judgment, you never go wrong.
And so looking at a person, who a person really is from the inside, is what he's now using the content of someone's character, if you will, to find out who a person really is, not just strictly by color.
And when you use that as a standard of measurement or judgment, you never go wrong. But when you just judge a man because of the color of his skin, then you're committing a crime.
Who they really are as a person, down to the core, it's not about race. Because it's essentially who a person really is on the inside. And what they really want to do is good, then it doesn't matter if a person's black, brown, white. If a person's doing the good deed, it's about the good deed. It's not about the color. I thought that was eye-opening, that is now who Malcolm is at this point in his life. And I think it's something that we all can use, that yardstick method, to judge any person by, and not by color of the skin. And he does say that concept of togetherness doesn't necessarily work in America. He does mention that.
Yeah.
He said what he can do outside the United States and unite. He was been to, he talks a lot about the Congo. He talks about a couple places. He was in Egypt when some riots were going on here in the U.S. It's a completely different concept when you look at racism as inside the United States as opposed to what he experienced outside the United States.
You know, and so when I got over there and went to Mecca and saw these people who blonde and blue-eyed and pale-skinned and all those things, I said, well.
Another reason why his mindset totally changed, because he had never experienced that. He just always thought that this is how it is all over the world. So he says, when I come home, I can no longer call everyone my brother because they don't look at me as being their brother. You know, because of racism. So you're right. I mean, that as a Muslim, he has to use that yardstick as a measure of man's deeds. But unfortunately, that's not the concept of America, right? That's not the concept of what everyone uses to judge a person. It's strictly by color, and you're right, we experience it every day. So racism definitely isn't dead, and he knew the difference between the two of being inside this country and outside. But I think that he was trying to communicate that he understands the difference between what racism is in this country and how I'm being treated outside of the country. And he wants to call everybody his brother, but he knows when he comes back home.
I also had to face reality. And when I got back into this American society, I'm not in a society that practices brotherhood. I'm in a society that might preach it on Sunday, but they don't practice it on no day, on any day.
I want to go back to what you said, Grant, about, you mentioned the Congo. And so I thought it was really interesting that the American proxy, the U.S. proxy war in Africa being fought through colonial powers, such as in this case Belgium.
In the Congo, airplanes were dropping bombs on African villages. African villages don't have a defense against bombs, and the pilot can't tell who the bomb is being dropped upon. When a bomb hits the village, everything goes. And these pilots, filled with flying planes filled with bombs, dropping these bombs on African villages, were destroying women, were destroying children, were destroying babies. You never heard any outcry over here about that?
The United States was propping Belgium up behind the scenes, equipping them and training them with weapons of war, so that when the Congolese rose up for their own independence, the United States was one of the key players in suppressing that act of liberation. But he asked his audience, which was almost entirely black, what would you say to your brothers in the Congo? Because you can't say, oh, well, I'm black like you. No, you're American. And we're Congolese, and you are subscribing to a government that is bombing your own brothers and sisters in the Congo. So in that way, he's relating to the struggle in a more international way. He's seeing the United States for the empire that it is and its impact on other people, and he's calling the audience to action.
But I think the black man in this country, above and beyond people all over the world, will be more justified when he stands up and starts to protect himself, no matter how many necks he has to break and heads he has to crack.
He also prophesizes U.S. presence in Vietnam. He talks about the United States advisors that were in Vietnam. This is 1965, so the war in Vietnam had not escalated to a full extent at that point. It was just beginning. But he says yet. He says the United States isn't deeply involved in Vietnam yet. And not more than 2 years later, there are hundreds of thousands of American men and women over in Vietnam fighting and destroying and killing people in the name of imperialism. But the other thing that particular part of the speech reminded me of is the U.S. role still today in Africa and in other places in the world. The United States is not fighting all-out wars in the way that it was in the 60s or the way that Belgium was against the Congo in 1965, but the United States has more boots on the ground, operates more military installations in Africa than the rest of the world combined. And in particular in Somalia, we're giving the Somali government millions of dollars to carry out a war of what's called terror. And so, just as in 1965, the United States was carrying out a proxy war against African liberation, today the United States is not only carrying out that same war in Somalia, but also in other places across the world. And so the reach of the American empire since 1965 has only grown. So I can only imagine what Malcom X would say today in response to what he sees the United States doing all over the world.
But I think that in these speeches, though, for me, though, I just hear the fear. And I think that's what resonates with me more than anything else. I think that's the personal side. I hear, I sense it. I know that he knows that he's done. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I went to last year we went to Disneyland or whatever. I hate roller coasters, right? And I'm on it. I'm on the roller coaster, and I know I'm dropping. right? And so they're looking back at me laughing because on my face I'm showing that fear. Because I know I'm about to drop, right? I'm about to fall. I'm scared already. Ain't nothing I can do to stop it. I gotta go through with it though.
You're already on the roller
I'm
coaster.
on the roller coaster.
You can't get off.
I can't get off. I want to get off it though. I want to get off of it. Oh, do I want to get off? But at the same time, I gotta show to my girl, my daughter, we can do this. I be the man for her, right? But she laughing, she looking at me laughing. But I gotta show face for her. But I know it's dropping. And then when I drop, at some point I just gotta scream. At some point I just gotta, it's in my face that this is it. I mean, I feel like I'm gonna die. But it's only a roller coaster though. But he knows it. He knows it, that you can hear that anxiety in his voice. You can hear it in his, like I said, how he was giving the speech. And like we discussed it for a few times, like over the month, to continue. Because he could have went to, instead of going to Detroit, he could have went to anywhere, right? He could have stayed home. He could have went to anywhere he had. Maybe to survive maybe another month. Maybe to spend some extra time with his kids, extra time with his family. So what gives a man that to say, I want to continue? Who has that in them? It's hard to,
I think it's beyond most of us to comprehend how a man would choose to march straight on ahead to his death, knowing that he's going to die. Martin Luther King did it. Malcom X did it. There's been a lot of leaders who have done it. They know, if I do this, that's it. But they do it anyway. Because the cause is greater than one individual. We're talking about millions upon millions of people downtrodden and abused, dehumanized, destroyed in many ways for nothing.
I want to say this. I'm not comparing. I was at Magic Mountains. I was on the kiddie rides. I wasn't comparing my struggle.
You already did. You did. You went on about 5 minutes. In great detail.
I would compare my struggle to
kitty ride.
But oh my goodness, I thought I was dying. On the way up. On the way up. Yeah. It was it. It was it.
You were ready.
It was it.
But you were ready.
No, I wasn't ready.
You were on the roller coaster.
No.
I don't think Malcolm was ready either.
Right.
I don't think Malcolm was ready either.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm
But
saying.
he's on the roller coaster. He's on the roller coaster. He's got his wife there. He's got his kids there. He can't jump off. They still on. He could have tried to take them on. We're gonna go hide in Egypt somewhere. He could have put them all on a plane that day if he had the money. What were his finances like? What were his finances like? What was he doing financially? How was he making? He had been pretty much cut off. He was struggling. But he did it. He went out and he did it anyway. He got on a plane, went to Detroit. He made that speech on February 14th.
So this is the speech where he goes on, he's talking about he's on the plane, he just got on the plane smelling like smoke. Okay.
Because his house was bombed the night before.
He got on the plane 6 hours after his home was bombed.
So to look at and probably wonder why Malcolm decided to come to Detroit. And what he does in his speech is he talks a lot about basically, and Detroit being a black city, right? So he talks a lot about as it relates to the Congo and other parts of Africa, but he makes statements of how black people have started to hate themselves. And the concept of hating themselves means to hate Africa or hate anything African.
We hated the color of our skin, hated the blood of Africa that was in our veins, and in hating our features and our skin and our blood, why we had to end up hating ourselves. And we hated ourselves. Our color became to us a chain. We felt that it was holding us back. Our color became to us like a prison, which we felt was keeping us confined, not letting us go this way or that way.
And so I think he looks at Detroit as like, I got all these black folks here. They should have some kind of interest in where they come from. And I think that he was trying to motivate, because he talks about basically, it's okay to not have to lean on the other person, the man, if you will, but instead to embrace yourself and your culture. So not only was he talking about that particular time in a sense of globalism and uniting black and brown people on a globalistic front, he's also talking about having pride too, and returning back to Africa in the sense of your roots and who you are. That's not something Malcolm ever talked about. Africa wasn't even in his language at the time when he was in the mosque with Elijah Muhammad with the Black Muslim movement. So I thought that was profound that he was making that type of plea. Not only, and he also specifically states and says that you have a better chance of helping your brother in Africa than you do somebody in this, helping if you were in Mississippi or you were in Alabama. And even goes to talk about Dearborn, Michigan, and how the Ku Klux Klan at that particular time lived there. And he goes in about how he lived in Inkster and talks about some of his background. But I think Detroit was specifically chosen to make the speech because of the audience that he had, and it captured minds that he was trying to change, to say, stop looking at where we are in America, but start thinking things of your brothers over in Africa or in South America with the Latin movement down there. I think Malcolm was kind of trying to point that out of, look at where you live at, look who your government is, look what they're doing. Don't be deceived and understand that the government which you're associated with is allowing killings and bombings, or is doing the bombings over in other countries of people who look like you. But yet, in this country here, this racism is still alive and well. So I thought that was profound pieces of that speech.
I enjoyed that segment because in talking about the like you were talking about if someone from the Congo came here and asked an American for accountability in what the government is doing, what would we say?
How do you think you would feel right now if some Congolese brothers walked up to you? They look just like you. How would you feel if one of them walked up to you and asked you about what your government is doing?
Because most of us have no knowledge, we have no frame of reference, we have no idea, nothing that's going on in Africa. Nothing. Another thing, because it's what you talked about, what you mentioned in the speech, about hating yourself.
So they very skillfully made you and me hate our African identity, our African characteristics. And you know yourself that we have been a people who hated our African characteristics.
And your African ancestry, your African blood, your African skin, you can't hate that and not hate yourself, and you can't hate yourself and not that. You said education could be the great equalizer. I think Malcolm knew that. I think his organizations understood that could be the great equalizer, and that's one of the reasons why at the end he was so dangerous, because he was bringing people together based on more than just the racial issue. Like Martin Luther King was planning a poor people's march when he was assassinated. It was no longer about just black Americans, African Americans, it was about poor people. And there's more of those in this country than anybody. If you unite the poor people against that 1%, they can't win. They can't. Not without assistance, not without a great deal of help. So they use us to help them. Divide and conquer, They use us to help them. They use us against each other. And Malcolm was talking about that in his speech. And when he took the struggle global, when he took it global, started talking about going to the United Nations and bringing crimes against humanity upon the United States, that's a battle they know they couldn't win. At the very least, it just made them look real bad. Also, he became a threat that they had to neutralize. They had to neutralize him. Who else among us has the courage right now to be that individual? Tyler Perry? Not. LeBron James? A little bit, maybe, but he ain't gonna do nothing to mess up his money. Look what they did to Kaepernick. Who else among us has the courage to be that individual right now and moving forward into the future?
He talks about that.
Yeah.
He talks about I think it's prophetic, because we're in this situation now of, he says they put leaders in front of you that they show you on TV, talk about the media piece, that the proclaimed leaders of the black community. We see today, who we know, Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, right? Those are the proclaimed leaders of the black community. And he's talking about this well before they were even thought of as being leaders. But he says they do it purposely to keep showing you these are your leaders, and then all of a sudden you accept them as being your leader.
They got certain Negroes whom they have to keep blowing up in the paper to make them look like leaders, so that the people will keep on following them, no matter how many knots they get on their head following him. This is how the man does it. And if you don't wake up and find out how he does it, I tell you, they'll be building gas chambers and gas ovens pretty soon. I don't mean those kind you got at home in your kitchen.
Because it's what they're showing you. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to accept anybody, well, we shouldn't accept anybody just because of the fact they say it's your leader.
It's because they say it.
Right.
How did Steve Harvey get to be such an important man in the black community? How? We don't even know this brother. We know he's been divorced 3 times, got married, cheated with the mistress, married the mistress, did it again, and then married the mistress again. You know what I mean? Been married 3 times. He could be chopping the heads off kittens every day. We don't even know this man, but since they held him up as our leader, him and, like, he's probably one of the most powerful people in the black community, Steve Harvey. And Tyler Perry, and who else? Will Smith for a minute, and Dwayne. These are the people who they prop up as our leaders. They're not educators. They're not politicians. They're not anything. They're entertainers. Yes, and that's something Malcom X talked about. Ice Cube. That's something that Malcom X talked about in other speeches.
Yes.
They always want to put entertainers up.
And it's nothing wrong with entertainers having the voice. But I mean, there was another entertainer said something. Rick Ross said. So Rick Ross was saying that understanding his place though. Mm-hmm. So even though he's an entertainer, even though he's a rapper, but he said, listen, I understand my role. My role is to entertain. If I want to know something, that means I need to go to the person who specializes in this area.
Exactly. That's
So that means for education, that means it's this person.
Right.
For maybe it's finances, it's this person.
Yeah.
So these people that we need to look up to for this information. Why would you know what I'm saying? So I think some people go to the wrong people for the wrong information. And there's scholars who've been spending decades or a lifetime in these areas. Mm-hmm. But it's more or less their job to bring it back to.
Yeah.
You ask me these questions, but also check out these people, because this is where I come into this.
No.
Just to show you how confused I am and my people are, we prop up. We'll go to Steve Harvey for advice. These are the guys that make the nightly news when they meet with Donald Trump or put forth a proposal for Black America. This is what makes the headlines on CNN, NBC Nightly News, and so forth. And some of my people then say, LeBron James should shut up and dribble. Right? Colin Kaepernick should just throw the football. He has no place bringing politics into the world of sports. But then when a scholar speaks, Cornel West has written volumes and volumes and volumes of books. And I mean, we could go on and on, right? Deborah McGee just wrote a book called The Sum of Us, right? There are black scholars there. There's no shortage of black scholarship, black leadership in this country. It's just a matter of what the media clamps onto and props up as the state of black leadership in this country. But when they assert very radical change in this country, then they're communists. They're racist. They're hateful. They're bigots. And so,
the foundation of critical race theory. Now they're trying to make us feel bad.
So that's how. If you to the extent that you're willing to pity me, that's how confused I am. Right? I don't want to listen to Colin Kaepernick. I want my game on. Right? Leave political leadership to politicians. But I don't want to listen to the politicians either, because they're telling me something I don't want to hear.
Nor the scholars.
Nor the scholars. So what I end up doing is this. This is me. This is my people. This is what we're doing in America. We're plugging both ears because we don't want to hear blackness from any quarter, from any place, and it's because of our own whiteness. Isn't that messed up too?
Yeah, it's awful.
You feel bad for me?
No.
No, but the thing I do, Tim. I want to free him from the sickness.
My guy, he got look, he got.
I want to free him from the sickness.
Yeah.
I want to free him from the sickness.
Yeah.
I want to humanize him.
Yeah.
The goal is to humanize him.
In that sense,
I want him to realize that it's okay for him to just be human.
Yeah.
I want people to realize that listen, you don't gotta be Superman.
Yeah.
I don't want you to solve everybody's problems. You're a failure and it's okay to be a failure. Live with that. It's alright.
To make people human,
Yeah.
you would definitely have to get rid of whiteness and blackness.
Yes.
And the concept of race.
Yes.
Altogether.
It goes into six. I didn't want to say that, but you're totally right. The whole thing got to be erased.
And that's what the yardstick theory comes in and talks about.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
Bees and the
I totally agree with that.
But we fell victim
Okay, go ahead.
to this feeling of inadequacy and inferiority or hopelessness. We turned to somebody else to show us the way. We didn't have the confidence in another black man to show us the way, or black people to show us the way. And see, in those days, we didn't think of a black man could do anything but play a horn, or some sounds that make you happy with songs in that way. But in the serious things, our food, our clothing, our shelter were concerned, and our education was concerned. We turned to the man. We never thought in terms of bringing these things into existence for ourselves. We never thought in terms of doing anything for ourselves because we felt helpless. What made us feel helpless was a hatred for ourselves. And our hatred for ourselves stemmed from our hatred of things African.
Yeah, that's 100% true. That's why the man is a hero today. That's why the man died almost 30 years before I was born. I've been hanging on his every word for the last 30, 40 years. Because that's brilliant. And that's 100% true. And that's the truth, and that's why he died. Because the truth hurts. And that's what he was doing to them. He was hurting them bad. Telling them the truth. Telling them the things that they could not stand to hear. So he had to go. And as a result, 7 days after he gave the speech we talked about, he was gone.
I'll get to the point. There's just one thing I want to say. I'll get to the point. There's just one thing I want to say.
This has been a very enlightening conversation. I think that we have talked about some very important ideas, and the construct of this speech has really brought a lot of things to light that we're still experiencing today. I think it's important that we not only think about this as being one of his last speeches, but we also can think about how we can relate what was going on at that particular time and how we are navigating life today. I think we all did a good job picking different pieces of speeches and what it means to us and what it means in the light of what we experience every day as us being even brothers here. What we have is our brotherhood inside our circle, but then the minute we walk outside of our circle, we're seen in a different light, and things are different experiences for each of us. And I think that we can take this speech and navigate through life. And I want to thank everybody for sharing and being open and being honest tonight. So, thank you, and we are at the end of our special presentation. We hope you share this with somebody, and I hope it'll be meaningful and impactful for someone's life.
All right.
Real power speak.
Good power.